Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Camera. Here we are with episode 108 of Behind the Camera. As always, before we get into today's show, if you would like to follow Behind the Camera across social media, you can find my link tree in the description, which will take you to Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, and also has the link to where you can buy my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. This is available in both paperback and ebook, and is free to read if you have Kindle Unlimited. If you want to see more of the behind-the-scenes side of the podcast, you can also support the show on Patreon. For £3 a month, you'll get access to extra content, including a Patreon-exclusive series, your name added to the wall of patrons at the end of every episode of Behind the Camera, and much more. But now, getting into today's conversation. Today, my guest is dyslexia researcher and professor Russell van Brocklen. Since recording this episode with Russell, our conversation has really stuck with me. As somebody who doesn't have dyslexia myself, I, like many others, grew up around people with dyslexia, particularly during school years and even further beyond. And I think what really stood out for me since having this conversation is the fact that I always knew it existed, but never truly knew what it was or even understood the first thing about it. So it was honestly such an enlightening experience talking to Russell, and I think there's so much to be taken away for anybody listening to this today. And if you or someone you know has a bright child who can talk circles around everyone, but struggles the moment reading or writing is involved, Russell has built something that starts where the child is strongest and works from there. This is a specialized course on Skool.com, Skool.com, instructed by certified K6 teacher Angela Wetuski. The link is in the show notes. But now, here's the interview. Russell, welcome to Behind the Camera podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So, Russell, you are a dyslexia professor, helping people overcome dyslexia or at least learn to live with it, which is an incredible thing. I think it's something that is massively slept on, especially when everybody grows up in some way, shape, or form around dyslexia. But before we get into dive further into that, let's talk about your background in terms of how you got to where you are as a dyslexia professor.
Well, this was the exact last thing I was supposed to be doing with my life. I was supposed to be a bureaucrat for the New York State government. So What happened is it was the late 90s. I was finishing up college, and I had this absurd idea of wanting to go and figuring out how laws were made, not some class I just wanted to know. So I ridiculously signed up for the New York State Assembly internship. And it was accepted. The reason why I say it was ridiculous is because I showed up and I said, "Hi, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing level." So I couldn't do the internship the way it was designed. So the speaker's office got involved, and they decided that they didn't care about the Americans with Disabilities Act. They were going to go way beyond it. They were going to accommodate the living daylights out of me and make this work. So they literally took me out of the legislative office building, put me in the Capitol, in the Majority Leaders Program and Council's office. Now, this is the office that runs the assembly day to day. And I see immediately why they did it, because there are 3 administrative assistants that could help with my horrendous writing. But they had no clue what to do with an undergrad. They dealt with grad students. So that's what they treated me like. So I had by far a vastly superior internship than my peers did, like night and day. So then for the academic portion, I allowed me to do a multi-hour presentation Q&A session instead of the standard big paper, standard accommodation for me back then. They wrapped all that up, sent it back to the State University of New York Center at Buffalo's Political Science Department. Now, mind you, this is the State University of New York at Buffalo.
Yeah.
These accommodations came from the speaker's office, right from the state itself. And they said, "We don't like the accommodations the state gave you.
Oh my God.
So we are going to modify your grade. So instead of 15 credits of A-, this is 29 years later, guess what's still in my transcript? 15 credits of F.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. So like everybody else who's been through this, We're going to say, I'm going to solve dyslexia. Well, I actually did. So what I did is I went to my professors and I said, where can I force myself to learn to read and write in grad school so I can actually teach other dyslexics? They said, well, if you like political science, it's easy. Law school, where you read and write more than anybody.
Yeah.
So I went into law school to audit two classes. The first one I went into was contracts, and the professor was a professor for longer than I was alive at that point. And he asked me, and he called on me the second day. Now, what they do in American law schools, they use the Socratic method. If you don't know what the answer is, they keep asking you questions anyway to embarrass you publicly until you adapt. Okay? Here's the thing, I didn't respond as a student, I responded as his equal. Now, understand what I'm saying. This guy was a professor longer than I was
Oh,
alive, and I responded as his equal the first time I was called on. So he's going after me. I'm responding. Then I start going after him, which kind of is like, what the heck is this? This kid's like 2 days into law school and he's going after me. So he goes after me hard. I go after him hard. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I know exactly where he's going, moves ahead. He knows exactly where I'm going, moves ahead. He finally throws up his arms, says, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. I got to move on to the next case in the interest of time. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I went back to the New York State Senate and I said, I solved dyslexia. I want you to fund my dyslexia research program, which they don't do typically. So, but you have to understand my senator, his name was Senator Joe Bruno. He was the majority leader of the state Senate. And back then, it was three men in a room. It was the governor, the speaker of the assembly, and the majority leader of the Senate. They decided everything, and then their minions did whatever minions do. Okay. So they're like, okay, we'll go to the education department. So I go to the education department and I say, yeah, Senator Joe Bruno sent me over here. Wow. Now they have to take me seriously. They're like, how can we get rid of this kid? That's my assumption. Nobody told me that, but that's just what I was reading between the lines. So they said, they said, where is this out of? And I said, Buffalo. They said, okay, our top ranked psychologist is a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology. Get one of them to evaluate this, to say there's something here, or you're done. So I said, oh, no big deal. So I go out to Buffalo and I looked around. I'm like, there's got to be a bunch of them. There's two.
wow.
One just happened to be the professor that gave me this evaluation to start this mess. Her name was Dr. Irene Halichka. She was the founding chairwoman of the psychology department of Buffalo State University. And then it's dean, and then professor of medicine all over the medical school, and yada, yada. One of the world's preeminent psychologists. So she went back to her old department and said, give me the most complicated, ridiculously thorough exam I can give this kid to figure out what the heck's going on. And they did. All 269 questions, plus supplemental testing she came up with. It was 20 hours over 3 days of the most intelligent woman I ever met, beating me up mentally, trying to make sure that I'm not selling, that I'm not a snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
So at the end of that, he said, as I previously did years before you ever asked me, this kid has a basic reading and writing level of like a 6-year-old. When he turns the system on, it's going from a system, part of his brain that doesn't work, the part that does. And his writing jumps to the average range of entering of the 70th percentile of entering grad students from being out of a 6-year-old. Light switch. And then she wrote up a 5-page report and sent it back to the education department, who paid for this. Now they're looking at this going, what the hell? Right? They have to take this seriously because this is like their senior top psychologist essentially in the state. And at this point, they say, okay, now you got to go and connect this to a professor. Like that ought to get my reading between the lines. That's ought to get rid of this kid. So I go back to Buffalo, and there's only one person that makes any sort of sense. His name is Professor James Collins. He wrote a book called Strategies for Struggling Writers, $1.5 million grant from the U.S. Education Department. And he found 3 default writing strategies of struggling writers: copying, visualization, narrative. And I had to connect my stuff to his stuff. People said it was going to take years, if it was even possible.
Yeah.
I did it in under 2 weeks. A plus, excellent. Are you noticing I'm doing really good in grad school?
Yeah.
That's something you're going to want to keep in mind as we go through this. So he goes and he does that, and then I get $15,000 from the university, and I had to get it done that quick because there was a competition I had to enter. Got 15 grand from the university. So then we go and test it out on the first student. Her name is Michaela. I want everybody to know I cheated. I was using students who were like me, incredibly smart, incredibly motivated. Michaela was the best at my old high school, the Averill Park Central School District, right outside of Albany, New York, our state capital. Michaela went from the 0 percentile on the GRE. She was reading and writing at the 8th grade level. At the 5 months later, she was writing at the average range of entering grad students, essentially. Okay, think about that, average.
Yeah.
And yet I wasn't happy because I hit the 70th percentile, didn't transfer over. So then I said, I need a really bright kid, super intelligent, but really bad writing. And I got it. His name was Adam. His writing was so bad that Dr. Halichka wanted him banned from college. She was so upset when she read his pretest. I never saw her angry before. Post-test, he scored about the 70th percentile of entering grad students 5 months later. All right, it transferred over.
Yeah.
So then I take that data and I go back to the New York State Senate. I said, well, years later, I want the money. And they talked to everybody, and the general consensus was, yeah, there's really something here. So they wrote the check to Averill Park Central School District. It's in the state budget. We pick one class period a day for the school year. Their best special ed teacher, Susan Ford, taught it. Took her about 4 hours to learn the process, not 2 years like my competition. One class period a day for the school year. They increased from the middle school level to average range of entering graduate students. They all went on to college. They all graduated, GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. Now, compared to my best competition at the time, it was Landmark College. I want everybody to understand this was the OOs. In 2013, they had a new president came in, completely upgraded the college like crazy. But I'm talking back in the OOs. At that time, they were about 25 to 33% successful for over $100,000. We were 100% successful for less than $900. We were 3x as successful for less than 1% of the cost. And that's how I got started in this crazy journey.
Wow. That is incredible. Like, it sounds as though you've completely blown the door down in terms of dyslexia research, like from your experience. Because, like, if I was to sort of like tell you my own personal experience of sort of being surrounded by it, it would be like when I was in like primary school or grade school, high school, even at that, it sort of kind of felt like you didn't really hear of it much in sort of teenage kids. Like, you know, whenever I was in school, it was always in primary level, you'd have heard that, yeah, there was a few kids in each class who were dyslexic. They would have had like a classroom assistant come in, and they would have kind of helped them work at their own pace or whatever it may have been. Mm-hmm. But then when it came to high school for us, it was sort of everybody was at an equal sort of level. It was very much a case of if you were dyslexic, you just kind of had to figure it out. That's at least kind of how it appeared to me from the outside looking in. And would you say that on a general level, dyslexia is something that's like completely overlooked in terms of a condition for people, especially younger people?
Well, it's not overlooked. They know about it. I mean, good grief. The Gowl School has the first school that dealt with this, and it's celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. And if you send kids there and they're in 5th grade and they stay for the rest of school, they will be as educated as any of the top private schools on the planet.
Wow.
Okay. Well, if you're talking like in the UK, if you're talking about Eton and how well they come out, that's what the Gowl School produces. Okay. Yeah. They're that good. But if you get the scholarship, it's $60,000 a year with the average scholar. Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Because the student to teacher ratio is about 4 to 1 to 5 to 1. So what I want to now tell you is just how do we just fix this problem? So I want you to think about, do you know a dyslexic kid in elementary or middle school, any time in your life, that was essentially writing randomly placed misspelled words?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can
Okay.
think of at least a handful off the top of my
I
head.
want you to think of the one that you knew the best.
Yeah,
What
got
was
it.
the kid's name? You need to make up a name. What's the kid's made up name?
James. I
Okay.
nearly on
Now,
habit just literally give his real name.
okay. Well, honestly, I don't think you're. I try to not do that, but no, I
No,
doubt anybody knows
I
who he
managed to
is.
give a
Yeah.
fake name, but very nearly on just out of pure habit. But, but yeah, we'll
Okay.
go with
All right.
James for this instance.
Okay. Now, how old was James when you knew him like this?
6 or 7.
Okay, let's call him 7. What do you
Mhm.
think when he was 7? What was at 7? What was James' speciality? What was his area of extreme interest and ability?
It wouldn't have been academic. It probably would have been more physical activity, like sports.
Give me a sport. Do you think you remember him liking?
Rugby.
Rugby. Okay. What if I told you I could teach you how to fix this basic sentence problem with James in the next 10 minutes?
I'd fully be, I'd be very curious to hear. I believe you
Okay.
100%, but very curious to hear. Yeah.
Okay. So just so everybody knows ahead of time, how far did you go in your education?
I went up to, finished school at 18. So all the way.
Okay. All right. So,
Then you put undergrad as well, but like for terms of school, yeah.
okay. How far did you go in undergrad?
Graduated. So I was in
Oh,
university till 22.
okay. So you're university educated. Okay. Because I'm going to ask you questions that I ask a 7-year-old. There's no trick question here. They're the two of the simplest questions you'll ever be asked. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen as we go through this.
Okay.
If you follow them exactly, this will work. If not, you are going to get thoroughly and completely confused. All right. And then you will have an epiphany on what dyslexia actually really is.
Let's do it.
All right. All right. So, first thing we're going to do is here's how we fix the problem. What we need to do is to get James to write a bunch of basic 3 reason sentences with decent grammar and correct spelling.
Okay.
And people think this is so hard. It's really not. So so just where I'm getting the science from. This is the best book in my field. It's called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. So she decided we will do brain scans. That's dyslexia. Now, do you see how the back part of your brain has this massive neuroactivity?
Yep.
And the back part of my brain has next to nothing.
Yes.
Now, do you see how the front part of my brain is about 2.5 times overactive?
Yep.
Okay. So here's what we need to do. We need to take it from the back part of the brain where nothing's going on to the front part of the brain where it's about 2.5 times overactive.
Okay.
Okay. That's simple. Nobody else in my field is doing this, but I came up with that crazy idea, decades ago. So the front part of the brain, according to Yale, is word analysis followed by articulation. Okay. So let's start off with word analysis. What you're going to do is you're going to type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? And James will copy it until it's correct. All right.
Okay.
And then you're going to swap out hero for James. So we got James plus sign. What are we talking about? Then we're going to go to a list of 10 things that James really, really likes, and then 10 things James really, really dislikes. And we're going to go to the first thing he really, really likes, which is rugby. So we got James plus sign. What are we talking about? We're going to swap out what are we talking about for rugby. We got James plus sign rugby. See how we got there?
Yes.
Now, this is where I'm going to try to fool you with two of the simplest questions ever that I actually ask 7-year-olds.
Okay.
All right. Here's my first question. We got James plus sign rugby. I'll ask James, do you like or dislike rugby? So now I'm asking you. We got James plus sign rugby. We got to swap out the plus sign for a word. Does James like or dislike rugby?
Likes.
Okay, now go ahead and swap out that word and give me a 3-word sentence.
James likes rugby.
But that's not what I asked. Ready to try it again?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Remember what I said. You have to do this exactly. All right. So we got James plus sign rugby. We
Yep.
got to swap out the plus sign for a word. Here's my question. Does James like or dislike rugby?
He likes rugby.
But that's not what I asked. Do I have you nice and confused now?
Oh, you do? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Did I not
wow.
tell you that this would probably happen?
Yeah. Like, oh my God.
Are you ready for your epiphany on what dyslexia really is?
Oh, please. Yeah. Like, oh my God.
Okay, let me tell everybody what's going on because we need to go back to the science. Here's the problem. You're dealing with this back part of the brain.
Wow.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
James has nothing going on back there. He doesn't. So what's going on is, remember, you have this massive activity. So when I asked, does James like or dislike rugby? You said likes. You added the S. James doesn't know how to add the S. He has nothing going on back here.
I did that consciously as well, like
Yes.
genuinely, like because in my head, I was thinking if I say like and it's replacing that, that's not going to make sense as a sentence. So that
Mhm.
like that was completely cognitive. Oh my God. Wow.
Okay, now here's why you did this. Because when you were like a young kid, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, whenever, a teacher taught you this rule. And do you remember if they had to correct you like 4 or 5 times, they started getting upset?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you just, that's what your brain does. You're like, I'm going to make this a proper sentence. James likes rugby. Okay. James has nothing going on back here. We know that because here is the science. There's nothing going on or next to nothing going on. Okay. So James doesn't know how to add the S. So
Yeah.
if I want you to imagine if, James had a kid now and you're the godfather, and let's just say you won the lotto in the United States, and now you're worth 100 million pounds after tax in the bank. You're rich,
Hmm.
and James Kids comes home crying because he said, "I can't learn I can't do anything." And then uh, the the Windward School calls you. The Upper East Side of Manhattan says, we've been dealing with this for decades. We have a 98% success rate. You send us James Jr., we will work with him for 4 to 5 years, okay? And then send him back to wherever he came from as educated as Eton, the best as you can imagine, okay?
Yep.
We're $75,000 a year just for tuition. It's going to cost you $500,000. Do you see how if you have 100 million, you might decide to pay for it?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But most of us don't have 100 million sitting around.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, so how do we fix this? Well, I'm going to recommend we do modern science. We're going to go back to the science book. We're going to look at that overactive front part of the brain, and it says, according to Yale, word analysis followed by articulation. So let's try word analysis. What we're going to do is we're going to ask James to read what he wrote out loud. James like rugby. I'm going to say, James, does that sound generally correct? He's going to say no. And I'm going to say, James, fix it. James likes rugby. And then he's going to practice that for the other 9 likes and 10 dislikes on each one until it's typed correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you see how that's a simple form of word analysis?
Yeah. Yes. And
Okay.
learning through repetition, really, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
massive repetition. And I'll go in a little bit. I'll explain why that's needed. Then, because give me a simple reason why James likes rugby at 7.
He was good at it.
James likes rugby because he's good at it. Okay. Now we still have a mess around here with grammar. So what we do is we tell James to read what he wrote out loud. Forget about spelling for now. Does it sound generally correct? Keep doing that until everything sounds correct. Now we've gotten rid of those horrific grammar mistakes, and we may have some little ones and some medium ones. Teachers can deal with that.
Yeah.
Our goal is just to get James so his gen ed teachers can work with him. But we still got a spelling disaster. Here's how we fix that. We tell James to drop a period. And then we say, anytime now that you retype this, if there's one spelling mistake, you got to retype the entire thing. And he will do that for 3 to 13 times. Each time he'll say, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake. And he keeps making it until he doesn't. That's 3 to 13 times. Once it's correct, then he does the same thing for the other 9 likes and 10 dislikes. Then we add reason 1, and we have reason 1, then we add reason 2, connecting it by the glue word and. For the first, we still have the same before because we have the same thing, and we have the same first reason. We're doing lots of copying. Lots of redoing. Then he comes up with a second reason, and we do that for the 10 likes and 10 dislikes until each one is spelled correctly with decent grammar. It sounds correct. So then we have reason 1, reason 2, and reason 3. The first 2 reasons stay the same. We add a third reason. This process for a 9-year-old, for parents doing 10 to 15-minute sessions, could take 5 or 6 months. But you can do this at home. And don't remember, parents always like, well, I got to get my kid to read better. Don't worry about the reading, because if you can write it, you can read it. Yeah. If you can write it, you can read it. And they're typing all of this on a real keyboard, not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. Okay? So that's that part of it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Okay. But now that's part 3 of the model. Now we got to go to the first part of the model that is so important. This is the most important about anything. Because without understanding this, you will fail for most kids. For this part, I'm going to tell you about Casey. I want everybody to know I never saw anybody like Casey before. I will never see anything like Casey again. I doubt any of the hundreds of teachers that I've trained will ever see anybody like Casey in their lifetimes. This was a one-off edge case. I met Casey at the end of 5th grade when she was 10 years old. She was reading and writing at the 2nd grade level. Casey was she turned 11 over the summertime. She was interested in Theodore Roosevelt, so I assigned her this little book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, that won the Pulitzer. This is the top book in the field. All 900 pages of it. This is for 15-year-olds to 18-year-olds. Yeah. Think 10th grade to first-year college level, depending on who you ask. Casey insisted on doing reading first, so I told her the process. Nobody told her to do this. Nobody even thought of it. Casey went up to her room, shut the door for 3 hours a night for the next 6 months. Most of the days, 8-10 hours a day during the summertime. Just doing this over and over again. At the end of that, you could turn to that random page, point to that random word, and she would tell you its dictionary definition. Casey jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, and I worked with her for 15 minutes a week.
Wow.
Okay? That's not the important point. I'm just giving you that as a background towards this insane motivation for this kid.
Yeah.
Casey's mom was concerned. She said, what happens if we went from a book that she likes to one she doesn't like? So I assigned her one that she hated. And I asked Casey's after we got done with all of this, how much did her motivation drop? She said about 50%. That's the whole point of all this. Her motivation dropped 50%. The most motivated kid I ever met in my life, that I will ever meet in my life. Most kids that are ADD, ADHD, or dyslexic will drop about 75 to 90%. So during the intervention period, until we get them at grade level, you have to find a book and an audio book in their speciality, or this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's why it's just easier for parents to do this yourself. It's a nightmare trying to get the school involved. Part 2, we have to go back to the brain science. So again, my brain is completely different. We have that 2.5 times overactivity. If you ask a dyslexic student, in their speciality? Do they have ideas flying around their head at light speed but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So, what we have to do is force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Now, let me put that in English. I want you to imagine. Do you remember Dr. Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech in the United
Yep.
States? Okay. So, I want you to imagine you were given this assignment that you actually had to do. Could you do this with no additional instruction? Go and write a high school level research paper, not a university one, just a high school one. Here's the question: what effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American civil rights movement of the 1960s? Imagine you had access to an American research library's university library. Could you walk in and, based on just those instructions, start pulling books off the shelf and write that paper at like the B level?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, no problem. You ask that to a dyslexic, and it's like us asking us to grab fog. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do. We're completely lost
Oh.
because we don't do big picture, eventually getting to the details. We have to start at a very specific point and then slowly go out. So we would ask it this way: what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? Well, then we know, yeah, we go to his biography, we go to that part, read it, and it'll tell us. We know exactly what to do. Zero ambiguity. That question will get us an answer. And that answer will get us another question, which will give us an answer, which will give us a question, which will give us an answer. Because that'll force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by
Yeah.
using writing as a measurable output. Say that again. That'll force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me give you an example. All right. That, because if you ask a dyslexic this question, in your speciality, do you have ideas? That's your area of extreme interest and ability. Do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? We're going to say yes. We have to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. See how we did that with the basic sentences?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Parents ask, does this work? I'm coming out with a book in the next few months called If You Write, You Can Read. And it's based, my part is based on Kimberly. I met her on December 27th of 2024. A few weeks before, she just had her kids retested for the state of Ohio. They came in, she spent $700. They tested all of them. Her four gen ed kids, just, Kimberly, she's a religious homeschooling mom with some college. Her four gen ed kids learned brilliantly how to read with traditional methods. But her 10-year-old dyslexic son, Reed, wasn't working. He was reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th percentile. Kimberly was really worried. So I started working with her for half an hour a week for the next 8 months. Reed, she worked with Reed for an hour and a half a week, 3 half-hour sessions on average. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. At the end of that time, Reed's friends came to him and said, Reed, we want you in public school to be with us socially. So beginning of August, call it 8.5 months later, he's in a public school getting retested, mom's miles away, much better data. Even if Kimberly doubled where he was in 8 months, he still would have been placed in special ed, away from his friends, unhappy kid. That didn't happen. Reading jumped from the 11th percentile to the 64th. His writing jumped from the 4th percentile to the 65th. His grammar jumped to the 97th percentile.
Wow.
Okay. As of April 2026, Reed was in public school, normal classes, getting mainly A's and B's. Kimberly did what every parent dreamed of in under 9 months, part-time, and not 4 to 5 years like the private dyslexic schools. That's how powerful this is.
Yeah. Like that's incredible, and that's something that I think most people, especially who might not be dyslexic or haven't kind of had that experience, wouldn't really know about. Because, like I mentioned before, my own personal experience has just been around the people I've known in the past and to this present day, and the way that, as far as I know, that they've kind of they've sort of dealt with it is a matter of just, well, as they got older, just kind of, well, just deal with it. You'll find your kind of way. That's incredible. And I just wanted to ask on the reading portion of things, is there a correlation between motivation and reading ability? Because I understand, like, sort of
Oh,
on a general kind of level,
absolutely.
yeah, there
A-
is, like, between with dyslexia, though. Yeah.
motivation is everything. That's why I
Okay.
said when you are doing the intervention period, okay, um, you actually need to, there's no getting around this. When you're doing the intervention period, you have to work in what the kid's interested in, or none of this will work. Now, once Reed was put back into public school, what did he fight back? Absolutely.
Hmm.
In math class, his teacher wanted him to write a lot, and he didn't want to because he was always a bit slower at it. So I told his mom and the school teacher to do this: just stand there and essentially cross your arms. You're doing this. And as any well-raised kid who parents told them no at 2 and 3, he tried. When you were a kid, you tried to test the system. He found out the limits, and he just did because he knew he had to.
Oh,
Okay, so but what I told you worked really good for, let's say, 7-year-olds. But what about older kids, middle, high school, college?
yeah.
All right, I'm going to now advance word analysis and articulation to a much more evolved level. And I'm going to show you a writing process, a writing technique that anchors this, that very few people outside of a doctoral dissertation understand. Comes from a book called The Craft of Research. So just to give you a background on this, I go down in 2006 to the Manhattan branch of the New York City branch of the International Dyslexia Association in Manhattan. I'm having kids write average veteran grad students. I thought I was royalty of a dyslexia researcher. Man, I was an idiot. So I show up there, and the professors come to me and they said, two of your kids in the last year scored increased to the 70th percentile of entering grad students. We don't care. We want the craft of research. I was like, the craft of what? And they said, the craft of research. It's a book that came out in 1995 from the University of Chicago to teach graduate students how to write their doctoral dissertations, and has since sold over 1 million copies in the last 31 years. All right. And I was like, you want me to teach? It's based on context, getting everybody on the same page, and then problem statement, coming up with a problem statement that you can actually do. That's what I added, that actually needs to get done, and then a solution where the reader actually learns something important. If you can't
Yeah.
do that, it says don't bother writing, which pretty much eliminates just about every university and master's level piece of writing in the United States. So, and then, like, you want me to teach this to the selected kids in high school? And they were absolutely serious. And it was yes. And then the teacher said, oh, this original program is brilliant. Does it work for normal kids? And I said, absolutely not. They said, come back when it does. And I came back 8 years later. So what I'm about to show you is how to do an involved body paragraph, an advanced one, based on context. So, and the way that I'm going to explain this is going to feel like it's coming out of left field. That's an American baseball term, which means like coming out of the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a very dyslectic thing, but it'll make sense very rapidly. So we're going to start off with a movie review.
Okay.
And they're like, how do you write advanced body paragraphs based on a movie review? It'll make sense really soon. I want you to think about a movie that meets 3 criteria. Number one, you think it's one of the best movies of all time. You know it intimately, and everybody's seen it. What's the name of that movie?
First thing that comes to mind for me is Point Break.
Point Break. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a really tough question.
Okay.
I need you to reduce Point Break to a one-word universal theme that you think best represents the entire movie. What's that word?
I can't do it. Can't do it in
Oh,
just
yes, you
one
can.
word.
One
One
word
word.
universal theme that best represents the entire movie.
Surfers.
Nah, that's
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
Try to get something a bit more. You can you've been to university. You can do it.
See, I could maybe do
One
like three
word
or four, but
universal
one
theme
word
that
is
best
tough.
represents it.
One word is tough.
Yes, this is hard.
Heist.
Heist. Okay. Now, do you see how long that took you?
Longer than I'm proud to admit.
Well, no. This is what happens because I'm just going to tell you what happened. There's no reason to be embarrassed.
Of course.
You're dealing with the front part of the brain.
Ah, yeah.
I got 2.5 times the neuroactivity. You're now playing in my sandbox.
Yeah.
So, for the parents out there, if I gave this to their 13-year-old dyslexic, who's big into Point Break, which so everybody knows was a Patrick Swayze movie with the same guy who played with Keanu Reeves. And Reeves is a lawyer, became an FBI agent. He's going after, and he's going after Patrick Swayze, and it was just a really fun movie. Now, your 12 or 13-year-old dyslexic would have come up with that in a matter of a couple of seconds at most. There are advantages to being dyslexic,
Yeah.
and they tend to be in what areas I would associate with graduate school. Because do you remember as an undergrad, they tried to make you well-rounded,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
but you
Just.
went to a grad program, it's all about something very specific.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I find like my own personal experience, I kind of find it was like for as an undergraduate, they're trying to like put you in a box that you're not gonna really fit into. Whereas, I mean, I never did a
Mhm.
postgrad, but my wife did, and my wife is also dyslexic, by the way, and she is probably one of the most. She's postgraduate education, probably one of the most articulate people I've ever met in my life.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, and she had a really unfair advantage. Is you saw how well I did in grad school. So, I'm sorry, what was the word you came up with again?
heist.
Heist. Okay. So, if we were to do a proper movie review, you would go and look at the major characters, major actors, and say, how did they do with the universal theme of heist? How did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? Then you write up your movie review. Then people will decide, do I want to see this movie or not want to see this movie? If they wanted to see it, then you've enhanced their experience because now they know what to look for.
Yeah,
Okay, now the whole point is the universal theme. So now I'm going to now traumatize some of your audience briefly because we're going to go back to high school English and specifically Shakespeare. It's only for a moment. Why am I doing that? Because in communication in English, Shakespeare's generally considered the absolute top writer of all time.
yeah,
Okay. So let's go back to high school to any Shakespeare play. You're going to have a hero. A hero wants to do something based on one or more universal themes. And then they're going with that, you're going to have your ultimate villain, which is a person, a character, or a universal theme, or concept, or some combination there too. And that villain's job is to prevent the hero from accomplishing their goal. The conflict starts in Act One, accelerates greatly in Act Two, resolves in Act Three. Sound familiar?
oh yeah,
Now we need to simplify that. And remember, the innovation that I'm now going to do is we're going to go back to that part of the dyslexic brain, and we're going to use word analysis followed by articulation at an evolved level. So, what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, let's assume that the dyslexic kid that we're working with is fanatically interested in Point Break. We're going to use that movie script, and we can discuss this at the middle school level, high school, college, or even grad level. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say to the kid, identify the hero, and then write out what does the hero want to do. Now, this is after the kid can already do basic body paragraphs. Typically, I'm just showing you the mid level. So the kid write out a bunch of paragraphs as much as he can. Then for each sentence, we're going to ask what is the most important word of that sentence. And then the kid's going to type out each one of those and create a list. Now we get to the point where this is a go, no go decision. Because let's just go back to the science again. That front part of the brain, 2.5 times overactive, the first thing is word analysis. Here's my question, and I'm being deadly serious about this. How can you apply word analysis if you don't know exactly what the word means? If you don't know exactly its definition?
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
So this is where I tell the kid, we're in your speciality. We're teaching you from the specific to the general. This is the work you have to do to learn to read and to be able to use this. That satisfies most of them. For the ones that don't, here's my backup plan. Remember that list of 10 things they dislike?
Mm.
I always tell parents to start off the one they dislike the most as a chore that they hate. So let's go back to you when you were a kid. What was the chore you just freaking hated doing?
Doing the dishes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want you to imagine if you're not going to do what I'm about to ask you to do, your parents are going to force you when you're like 12 to stand over the dishes and you're going to do them. But not only that, they're going to mess up the dishes really bad and let them soak and just harden. And then you get to do it that way until you change your mind and will do your work. How long do you think that'll take?
At least twice as long as it should.
No, how long do you think
Oh,
it'll take of
specifically.
you doing dishes until you decide to do what I'm about to ask?
Oh, 30 minutes, maybe.
Okay, let me give you an example. One of the kids, he was the oldest, and he was really his room was perfect. It was just like the cleanest thing. You could literally do surgery on his bed. Just a joke, but it was that clean. Okay, he was the oldest. He hated having his little sister tell him what to do. So he said he's not doing this anymore. So his parents had his little sister go up with him, and they're videotaping this, mind you. And they told her to go mess up his room and then order him around to clean it. Okay. And then he was done, they told the daughter, do it again. And they're videotaping this for hours. They're having the time of their life. And then they said, we could do this tomorrow. We can do this every day until you're willing to do your work. Oh, no, it was horrible. 10 years later, when he's in college, they're showing this video with his fiance. And she's like, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. And he's like, oh, it's horrible. And people around him saying, your fiance says it's funny. Laugh at it. Horrible. Even 10 years later. Okay. So this is how you get them to do it. So what is this horrible thing I'm asking them to do? We have to know exactly what word each word is. And this is exactly what Casey was doing all those hours, just a different version of it. We would type out the word, then we'd go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary or Oxford English or some other trusted dictionary, and the kid would pick out their definition. Mm-hmm. Then they would type out the word and the definition each time.
Wow.
Eventually, they will know this. And we're going to do that with all the most important words. Okay? And then the kid's going to pick the best, most important word, and that's going to be our base universal theme. Now we're going to go back to the universal theme of hijack. Why have I taken you guys on this long explanation? Because like the word hijack, you can only do a very broad-based, it's like painting with a broad brush.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do anything laser focused. We're now at that same problem. 30, 40 years ago in advertisement, you could do broad-based. You went on one of the major networks, you shot it to everybody. Now we laser focus. So how do we laser focus? We then take our best universe, our best most important word, which is now our base universal theme, and we send it to the thesaurus. We pick 5 synonyms, 10 synonyms, the whole level, multiple levels. And for each one, the kid looks at it and they're trying to find a word that best matches what's in their head, something better than where we are. And so they're going to type out the word, look it up in the dictionary, pick their definition, and type it out. Eventually, over the course of typically 6 to 12 months, they are going to know, they've been doing this so many times, they just know what the word is.
Yeah.
So what happened to Casey when she was done with her book, I went on to the next level. And I would say, Casey, thesauricize this word. That's my name for it. And she said, I came back with 217 words. She counted later. and I did it in under 10 minutes. I know exactly what each word meant. Here's the best one. And she could have argued that in college.
Wow. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they do that until they find the word that best matches what's in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's never going to be perfect, but that now we can use that to laser focus to pick out our villain, our ultimate villain. Okay. Now we got the hero, our universal theme, and our villain. We add a couple of words to make it sound generally correct. Now, do you see how that's an evolved form of word analysis?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Don't worry, we're almost done with this part of it. Then we're going to go because 3 good reasons. Now we're going to articulate an advanced form of articulation. After each of the 3 the best reasons we can come up with, for each reason, we're going to reduce it to a simple universal theme. 1 word, simple universal theme. And then we're going to go to the script of Point Break. And we're going to pick out a sentence that deals with that universal theme at the beginning of the script and a sentence that deals with that universal theme at the end of the script. And we're going to put those 2 together. All right. That's going to be our data. From that, we're going to create our topic sentence. Now, have you ever noticed that when you're doing research papers in college, that when you had your topic sentence and your data, it didn't flow very well generally?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Now, to solve that, have you ever thought of applying a warrant to a body paragraph?
No, can't say I have.
Okay. This is from the craft of research. A warrant connects a topic sentence and your data, in this case, 2 quotes, by answering a how and why question.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that, they're now connected and they flow much better.
Okay.
Now that you know that, if you don't do it, you will be arrested. That's a joke. Okay.
But it's good because it applies to what you're saying in terms of how to, if you don't do this, bad things will happen. You will get your room messed up, etc. kind of thing.
But now you follow that process.
Yeah.
And within a matter of 6 to 12 months, the kid will learn to read. And I'll tell you what they do. They do this at 11 and 12. And when they're 16, 17, taking their SATs to go to college, the verbal section, or any test you give them, the verbal section is essentially a vocabulary test. My kids don't need to learn a list of hundreds of evolved words because they did it when they were 11 and 12. They remember 70 to 80% of the definitions. Drives their classmates crazy. And now that's the context version. Okay.
Yep.
Now, here's the problem people are running into. I want you to imagine all this AI stuff that's coming out. I am one of those people that literally does 10 times more work per hour than a normal educated person with a master's degree and decades of experience. I'm actually around, best my calculations are, about 13 times. All right. Mm-hmm. So how do I know this stuff? Because when OpenAI came out with its $200 a month pro plan in December of 24, I bought it that day. All right. So here's where I'm telling people the bottleneck really is with AI. It's the problem statement. All right. You have to know what is a problem that we actually need to solve. That's actually worth the effort. Most people can't do that. So here's how we teach you to do that. I'm literally ripping off the former head of disability services for the State University of New York at Albany a couple of decades ago. This is what she told her students. This is why intuitively did. So I want you to imagine a dyslexic kid walks into this, one of the top 100 universities at the time in the United States. And she would look at the kid's curriculum and say, okay, she would tell him what to do. And here's your 35 hours of work, go do it. And the kids had like 3.5 GPAs out of 4.0. Here is the simple process. Before you even showed up to your first class, you'd get the book for the class. You would read it 1 time, just read it. Then you would read it a second time, trying to circle things you find confusing. Yep. And then the third read through, you try to answer those questions. If for the part of the class you're going to attend, if you read it again before class, if you're still confused, that's the purpose for going to class, is to resolve your confusion. If you're still confused after that, you go to the office hour. There's hardly any studying at the end of the semester. You already know all the stuff. All right. But you see how this is beginning to ask you questions.
Yeah, 100%.
So let me give you an example of the most advanced students we're working with right now. His name is Grayson. Grayson is he's not dyslexic in the least. He's the 99th percentile in math and 99th percentile for science. Grayson wants to get his PhD, work for NASA to terraform Mars. All right. To do that, we have to get him published in a peer-reviewed journal. So I already found which one. I already know what he has to do. So number one, you have to find the hole in the journal. I'm creating customized aspect things for Grayson. He's currently reading at the 11th grade level. The content is at the second year college level. All right. So we're starting off with that, and then we're slowly connecting document after document. At the end, he still has questions. We turn that into the next document to build his base knowledge until his question leads into what needs to get filled in the journal.
Yeah.
And this will take at least a year, probably a year and a half, 2 years, maybe 3 years to do. For him to build up enough knowledge to make that connection. Once we have that, then we just show him how to solve it. Remember, this is at the highest level. This is a peer-reviewed journal article. How old do you think Grayson is?
I originally thought at college age, but
he's on the young side.
The young side, 13?
Grayson's 10.
10, wow.
Okay. So for him, we're going all the way to, we need to get past a desk rejection from the journal. That's you pass that. That means you've done everything the journal wants, and it's good enough to be considered by a peer reviewer. Then it will be rejected, and there'll be a laundry list of things to fix. I met on another podcast a gentleman who's on the board of directors of one of our top 10 technical universities. And when the time comes, I'm going to ask him to connect Grayson to a professor, and Grayson will go in and say, "I just got peer rejected for my article. I need to correct all this stuff. I'd like to work with you to do it," and watch the professor's jaw drop because, well, Grayson will be 14 or 15 at that point. Doing things that is normally done with, advanced PhD students.
Yeah. Like
that
easily
gets
twice
their
his age.
attention. That gets their attention. So what we do that with most kids. No, honestly, what we do with most kids is, and these are Gen Ed kids primarily, is I have another kid. His name is Alfred. He's 12. He's homeschooled. A very big STEM kid, brilliant. Okay, he's going to be a standard engineering science kid. So his thing is hawks as hunting birds. So we're going through the same process, but we're going to end up with a question with a question statement to add knowledge to somebody who probably knows a tremendous amount about hawks, but not a university professor. Well, they would learn something substantive. You have to take your audience in mind. And then we're going to show them how to write it at a standard 10, 20-page college paper. All right? Yeah. That's what we're probably going to end up with him. So we do this with everybody that wants to go that far. And we train the parents to teach their kids. Now, here's how this relates to AI. Even if the kids know nothing about AI and freaking hate it, they go out in the real world and their employers require them to use it. So here's what happens with my graduates. We did this in high school. They practiced this through college and maybe a grad program. They go out and they first of all have to be able to ask, what the heck is a big enough problem that is actually worth our time, that actually needs to get solved? And what do you know? They actually know how to do this without knowing a darn thing about AI. So they'll come to me and say, what do? I said, the problem statement, go do it. And they'll talk to the AI, they'll type with it. I don't care which one they use. They'll come up with that. And then they'll go and they'll actually do it. And they'll turn in the report to their boss and they'll go, this is brilliant. We can use this. How did you use AI? And because we're dyslexic and we're really good at grad school stuff of coming up with our own systems. Oh, I tried this, I tried that, this worked, this didn't. Then within weeks, they're training their peers on how to do AI. And then they're like, how do you not know how to do a problem statement? I did this in 10th grade. And then they have to show them how to do problems. They have to retrain them in everything I taught them. Right. Then those kids go, then they're good employees. So I don't care how evolved AI is. What you're finding as we get closer to the mid part of 2026 is the most important thing is you have to know what looks right.
Yeah.
And if it's not, how to fix it. How do I do that? I don't know how to prompt worth a damn. I know the basics. I know the general process. I go to 5.5 extended thinking, and I say, this is what I want to do. We get the idea. And I say, go research and write out that prompt. And I'm going to have Claude Cowork powered by Opus 4.7 normal do the work. Then it'll go and do that. And I'll put it back in and say, how do we do? Where did we fall short? I always tell it to find out where a problem is. Go research how to write a better prompt. Tell me everything that you want changed at a line by line level, and then give me a new prompt and do it again. And I do that for about 3 to 4 times. And then I take it, I put it into currently Opus 4.6 extended thinking, because 4.7 in its modular thinking, I can't get it to think as long as I want.
Yeah.
So 4.6 extended thinking, and I have that run through 3 modes that I created. One is a catastrophic mode on what did we miss. One is what else should we generally correct, and one's an editing mode. And once I get done with that, I turn it into a professionally typeset PDF document, go back to 5.5 extended thinking, create an image of it, put it together, ship it out. It's about 90%.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
That's incredible. Like, I quite like, you know, the use of AI for certain things, but it's never a way I would have thought to actually use it like that, like in just the sort of intricacies and stuff. But I guess, like, you know, goes back to the whole overarching theme, like in terms of the brain activity and the, you know, the front and what's going on. That's fascinating. Something I picked up on as well from what we've been talking is a number of the kids that you've worked with in the past have been homeschooled, and like the way they've turned out, like, has been absolutely phenomenal. And do you feel that there is a sort of advantage to being homeschooled in terms of being able to sort of pick up these methods and be able to sort of really absorb them and take them in, compared to somebody in like public school, for example?
Well, I'm just going to go back to the research.
Mm-hmm.
The research says the most important thing in quality of outcome is the student to teacher ratio.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I'm telling you, at those private schools, why is it $75K a year?
Mm.
Well, the teachers compared to New York State public school teachers get paid horribly.
Yeah.
It's because it's 4 to 1 to 5 to 1. Okay. Now, when you're doing homeschooled, it's 1 to 1, or, you know, parents go between a couple of kids, even though the parents aren't anywhere near as well trained. Most of them are not professional educators.
No.
So when we had to figure out how do we help parents to do that, we put up our platform on it's called Skool, SKOOL.com.
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay. And the instructor that we have, her name is Angela. And I met her she was the producer of another podcast I was on. Angela was massively skeptical of everything I said. I mean, to the point of she thinks this is snake oil. But she decided to look into it, and she had a qualification most parents don't. Angela is a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with a 2-year master's degree and 11 years of teaching experience. And after she looked into this and started teaching her son her son August, who is dyslexic, she found that this worked brilliantly. And she is now the person who my competition, if you want any in-person instruction, it's $500 to $1,000 a month. Unless you got a couple of BMWs in your driveway, that does not work for most people. So we lowered it to $147 a month, and Angela's there for an hour each week to answer your questions. And people stay with us from, you know, the most basic sentences all the way through with what we're doing with Grayson.
Yeah.
And I can tell you who else is doing that in the world. No one.
No, for sure. Like, it's honestly
not with a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Well, honestly, it's all just so fascinating, you know, because like I've certainly learned a lot from our conversation here. Like there's so much about even just sort of what dyslexia is. That's just something that I never really would have ever known or understood. And like, it really just, it is just so fascinating, like, you know, especially how different things work for different people, you know, based on sort of how their brain works and what their brain activity is like. It's been absolutely fascinating stuff. But Russell, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of the insights and everything. I think it's certainly incredibly important for these types of conversations to be had. It's important for people to sort of know and get like an understanding where they might not have had before. So honestly, thank you so much. Before we do wrap up, I would just like to give you the floor. Just if you would like to let the listeners know where they can find you and your work, and you know, anything else that you would like to share on your behalf.
Just best thing to do is go to skool.com. Just type in dyslexia classes and you'll find us. And we are there to help you take your kids to wherever you want to go, from the most basic sentences to right up to doctoral dissertation work.
Amazing stuff. Well, once again, Russell, thank you very much for your time and your insights. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And yeah, take care.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And there you have it for episode 108 of Behind the Camera. Massive thank you to Russell Van Brocklen for being today's guest and for his powerful and enlightening insights. Be sure to check out Russell and his work, links all in the description. As always, thank you to all patrons for your support. You are all truly appreciated. And of course, if you would like to stay connected with Behind the Camera, check out my link tree in the description for all socials and for my book, Behind the Camera, The Journey So Far. Thank you for listening, for the support, and for being part of the journey. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.